start with a roll call.
Yes. Okay, Counselor Ferguson,
Here.
Counselor McBride,
Here.
Teddy Bora,
Here.
Jim Talt,
Here.
Stephen Bertel,
Here.
Jacob Heister,
Here.
Mark Seeger, not present yet, and David Hetty.
Here.
Okay, and Bob Woodruff is absent this evening, he's traveling. And then also just for the record, we are also joined this evening by Travis Smith from Keller Associates and also Percy Peralta Ramirez from Keller as well, who's standing in for TJ this evening. And we are also joined tonight from the Oregon Department of Forestry by Allison Harrell and Brittany Oxford. I hope I pronounced everybody correctly. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can you please stand for pledge of allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So before we go to public comments, I would like to make, we have two guests who have come quite a ways out of town to do a presentation for us and have graciously spent a good portion of their afternoon here. So I would like to make a motion to honor our guests and move the ODF presentations of 5.3 to the first part of our new business discussion so that they can then transition. Oh, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are now going to do public comments. So the first is Lucas Morgan.
Yeah. Question though, is there any way, I haven't been here for a little while, so I don't want to speak out of context. You know, I mean, I have thoughts, right, from what I've heard and read and all that. Is there any way I could give public comment later in the meeting so that I make sure I've heard from you before I start playing? No,
Unfortunately, we have to do it at the beginning.
that's fine, that's fine. That's really cool. Just know that,
Could you take my chair so you can be heard better on the microphone?
oh yeah, absolutely. I was joking coming out of that one.
Thank you, Counselor Ferguson. Are we doing 5 minutes for a comment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I forgot my notes. Hold on. One thing, I wrote it down. Thank you.
Your rules question.
Where's my phone? Oh, it's over here. Oh, the Zoom folks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's closer up to that.
Okay. Well, so I'm Lucas. Hello, everybody. Thanks for letting me talk. I've been in Newburgh about 2 years. So I haven't been here forever. And I got involved with all this a while back when I first started hearing about the River Street plans, and then I bailed because the ad hoc committee got formed, and I was like, okay, a bunch of locals are now very involved in the entire situation. I've only been here for a little while, so I'm gonna back off and let y'all decide. But I got back involved because I do love Newburgh. I've been here for about 2 years. I'm very happy to be here. I like it much better than any other Portland metropolitan sub area, town, whatever it is, because Newburgh is Newburgh, right? It's very much its own thing. It's not strip malled or whittled down, or doesn't feel like some, you know, copy and pasted type of town that I've driven through 500 times with a different name, right? So, and I think River Street is a big part of that. I think everybody here, everybody at this table, everybody over there is very invested in all of this because we like Newburgh for that very particular reason. We like it for what it is, right? So we're not here about people wanting to make changes, you know, positive though everybody is trying to work towards. I'm hesitant because I like Newburgh the way it is. You know, that's not to say that things don't have to happen or work doesn't have to be done, but when we're talking about major changes, I think it's very important that we're all very aligned on exactly what is necessary and what are the options on the table as of right now. And in previous discourse, though again, I wanted to wait because I wasn't sure if this was still true. I have heard of repaving the road, only repaving the road, not doing the ground level rework, considered the equivalent to doing close to nothing. or not solving the problem, or not doing enough, framed as almost sort of a passive lack of activity, you know, sort of shamefully indecisive, you know, or something that's not enough by any means. But I think that's an error because we love River Street as it stands right now, except for the fact that it's bumpy, right? It's very, very bumpy, and that is a problem, right? But repaving the street and only repaving the street, I think offers a series of values that have just not been heard, or I haven't heard expressed as much, right? And I wrote those down. So one, I think if we just repave the road, one thing we absolutely do is we ensure that there's no ambiguity as to what the financial implications of simply repaving the road are. Right now, we have very professional and intelligent speculation that it will cause financial hardship down the road because we'll have to do it more frequently, right? We're talking about disruption over decades that will make us have to continue to repave, right? We don't know the timeline exactly on that. Maybe it's an undue deficit of 3 years, 4 years, but there's a lot to say. I knew this would happen. So we have, but we're not entirely sure what it's going to look like. And so I think moving forward with one of these plans right now could maybe possibly make us take action that we just don't have all of the information on as of right now. Two, just repaving the road effectively eliminates a huge amount of disruption to the road, the streets, the culture, the things that I think make Newburgh very much Newburgh, right? Which is the oddities that we have that don't exist anywhere else, which maybe is a canopied street that can't live forever. Certainly trees die, they're going to go and go away, but I don't know they have to go today. So that would also effectively be gone. Third, at least for right now, for today, Will's gonna get really mad when I say this. Okay. We're gonna spend less money, so like, I think we all think of this as a cost savings thing because we're all thinking long-term. That's very good. I'm glad we are. City planning is fantastic. Cost of cash up and down right now today, so much less. We have additional funding coming from NURA and additional tax opportunities that are possibly more available now than they might be in 5 or 6 or 7 years or whatever it is. But the moral of the story is we're going to spend a lot less right now, today, to just repave the road, and it'll be less disruptive. We also give ourselves a lot more time to figure this out, right? We have years, maybe 4, 5, 6, to figure out what exactly needs to happen with River Street in the long term, as opposed to the timeline we've been graciously given by the council and the mayor to try and figure these things out, okay? And then last but not least, we're done. Okay, that's it. All right, well, thank you very much for hearing me out. That's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And then our next public speaker is John.
Do I have to sit in Wells Fargo? Can I just stand somewhere? Like, do I need to be in front of like a specific microphone?
This is the microphone in the middle, is close enough, so you're good there.
I just wanted to say thank you, honestly. This has been a very heart-wrenching, very challenging, very complex, multi-layered challenge. And I think that right now, a lot of us feel in the political environment that we feel powerless about a lot of things that are happening. And it's been really, really cool to like see us come together and like figure something out and have the opportunity to like have our voices be heard and people coming and sharing their talents. And I just really wanted to speak to that. And Brittany and Alex, and for coming today, like it's been like a collaboration, which has really brought a lot of like healing of my own experiences with justice systems not being just and things like that. But it's been cool to see us come together as a community. And it's something I'm really, really proud of. Like, despite what the results are going to be, whatever, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to say I'm really grateful to have like worked with everybody and have been a part of this, and even bumping heads sometimes. Like it's been a pleasure. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, what's going on, thank you all. So we're not gonna move into our existing business. I did want to take just a moment I've gotten a lot of questions this week that I think very understandably want to know very specific details about what this project is going to look like, short-term and long-term. And so I wanted to just take kind of a moment to contextualize our next 5 decision items, of where we are on the timeline. So I drew a project timeline up here on the whiteboard. And so I think it's just a good reminder for us that kind of in the between 0% design and having a completed project, that right now we are in this kind of, for better or worse, 10,000-foot view of which is less than 10% complete of where this project is. And so we have really good information, we have some really good ideas, but right now we are less than 10% complete. And a lot of the questions that have been sent my way around design specifics and specific questions around which tree where and how specifically will this look in this specific area. As much as I wish we had those facts, the desired specifics are going to be closer to that 30% mark, with design check-ins and feedback and collaboration at the 60% mark. And ultimately, we're going to have much better known facts at the 70% mark. And so I just want to kind of remind folks with where we are that there's a lot of desire for very concrete known information, and I understand that. And we're still early, and we have to do like the survey and the RFP to get to some of that more specificity component.
What's our?
Request for proposal. So, which I know feels really tricky, but I think just kind of like, as we're thinking about where we are in the plan and the design and pre-process, that timeline piece, I think, is going to be a helpful space for us to remind where we are. Because I'm going to guess that Travis, you won't have 100% answers tonight because of where we are from a survey standpoint. Yes.
Question, timeline wise, at 70%, how far out is that?
Do we have like a length of a project?
Package subject to case.
Just
Yeah,
a
we
guess.
Because we know that.
yes, the
30%.
survey will take a month or so. You know what, so you can have an RFP process, that's gonna take some amount of time, 3 months. Once that's underway, we would go ahead and get the contract signed, then you begin the first step we would do is the survey. So that's gonna be a month or 2 process to get the survey wrapped up. We bring that in, at that point, we'd be charging forward towards 30% design, which is really trying to nail down the horizontal elements to this project, because now we've got actual data. So that's usually, on a project like this, let me also introduce Percy Peralta. So I want to just start off with just one disclaimer. TJ is very, very sorry that he cannot make it tonight. He had well, he's trying out wedding cake. So with his bride, so he has a pretty good excuse. So he didn't look at his alternate calendar last time y'all committed to this TV. So we've forgiven him, but he's very sorry that he's missing this. So I apologize, we're not gonna bring in Percy's experience on this project, or I'm sorry, TJ's experience on this project. Percy's been involved with the design as well. And then I've been kind of just more interfacing between the city and our firm. So a rough ballpark, about 30 to 60 to 90, yeah.
Well, I'd say 30 to 60 to 90, that'd be, I don't know, 6 months. Not 6 months.
Okay.
Something like that.
After
Sort of
survey.
my follow-up to that, maybe why we get specific questions is unclear, the community engagement plan throughout. So maybe early on, people are feeling a lot of desire to share because they don't know when that time period will end. So if we can be clear on how engagement works throughout, that might help free up.
So that's a great point. So our ad-hoc is 2 years. With this initial being kind of that like 5-6 meeting. But the hope is that we would continue to have voice and input and view these designs as we go along.
It was always conceived of that this group would continue to meet through the process and even perhaps beyond to remediate any questions, concerns, requests, and make sure that at the end of the day, people have something that they're really proud of and that they like.
So for us, when we decide this is the plan, then it goes, I mean, my understanding, it goes to council for a vote.
Mhm.
And then they vote, and then they say, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
And then, once they say go ahead with the plan, we're still gonna meet after that to hash out
Mhm.
specifics of what the
Yeah.
plan is.
So council would vote on a plan, the RFP would go, and then we authorize Will to spend the money. And then we would meet as part of that design process as.
So for us, for our decision, that's at the about the 10% part. Where we present it to the council for a vote.
Yeah.
Once they vote, then that's it, we're going forward with whatever plan we
Mhm.
submitted or
Yeah.
proposed and they approved.
Mhm.
Okay.
So with that timeline context in piece or in place, I'm gonna hand it over to, it's very publicly, I wanna say thank you. These two have been incredible. They have spent many an hour on meetings with me and having conversations and letting me ask questions. And then have come out and spent a good portion of their afternoon here in Newburgh, having conversations with the city, but then also just walking the street. So thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Jerry. So maybe we'll introduce ourselves. I'll give some context into what our program is and what we do and why we're here, and then we'll talk about some of the things that we saw on River Street. So hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Oxford. I work as a community assistance forester in the Urban and Community Forestry program. I have a bachelor's degree in environmental science. I'm a ISA certified herborist and a tree risk assessment qualified arborist as well. Give your intro, then I'll tell folks what our program does.
Sure. My name is Allison Harrell. I'm also a community assistance forester at Oregon Department of Forestry in the Urban and Community Forestry program. I have a bachelor's in biology and chemistry. I have a master's in environmental science and urban forestry. And I am a board certified master arborist, qualified tree risk assessor, licensed pesticide applicator in the state of Oregon, a number of other things. But I've been in the industry working directly with trees from the ground, starting as a climber and doing tree work to working as a consulting arborist and then now working at ODF. And I've been in this industry for about 15 years. So thank you for having me and thank you for letting us share our experiences with your trees today.
So what does the Urban and Community Forestry program at ODF do? Really, we just serve as like a guidance for local municipalities throughout the state who maybe don't have certified arborists on staff or even contractors in their area, or really anyone that have questions about trees that come up, but that, you know, having an external person come and give us second opinion would be helpful. So it's really nice to hear from residents in our inbox, as well as meet council members and staff, and see this beautiful place and understand sort of the context that you're all working in. So thanks for being here, inviting us and allowing us to untease this with you. Big thing to untangle. And it's not unique, like we do this in a lot of communities, so you know, there's success stories and lessons to be learned every time that we meet with a new community.
So I'm going to dive into a little bit of what we saw today, a few recommendations, and then I'll hand over to Brittany for some opportunities. And I would love to have like slides and things, but you're just going to have to deal with me doing the note thing. But thank you for taking the time. Thank you for all of your input. This is a pretty hard project to see. Thank you, really, thank you for being here. And I know that all of the pre-work that you even got to before we got here today, there's a lot of factors that have led you to this, you know, next round of proposals. So given the fact that you have the specific NERA funding opportunity, And given the fact that you are really trying to make things accessible, I do think that what you're looking at as far as a plan feels like the right one. And I know it is difficult to hear, but the pragmatic reality around this is that we walked the streets all the way from 4th down to 11th on River Street today. And the reality is that not only do you have the road and infrastructure, like hard infrastructure issues, there are a lot of green infrastructure issues, which that's what we call trees. A lot of the trees are kind of in the wrong spot, and you'll hear us talk about right tree, right place. A lot of these are not in the right place. So just as a few examples, even some of those really big, beautiful trees, those are planted underneath utilities. We would have never recommended that a tree that was gonna get that size to be planted underneath those utilities. We've seen them hacked, to be quite honest, by the utility companies, which is for safety, but they don't leave trees in the best state of health. Some of the trees are just not long-lived trees. Some of those parkway trees are kind of little diddly things and actually a bit of a missed opportunity. Some of the areas that have really wide green areas and a big open area above got planted like these tiny little things, which is a missed opportunity for sure. Some of them are going to have to go soon anyways because of pest problems. So I'm sure you've heard about emerald ash borer that is, maybe you have, entered your community. This is an invasive pest that is here, it is here. You have a detection here in Newburgh, which means that any of your fraxinus ash trees are going to have to be removed in the next 5 years anyway. So from that perspective, there's only a few of them, but it does matter when we're looking at the grand scheme. There's also a couple of birch trees, which are also succumbing to a different pest called bronze birch borer. And then some of them are really at that age of maturity where they would start to go into senescence, that's, you know, old age. And I do hate to break it to this whole group, but we are all mortal, we will all die, all of our trees will die too. So there is a component of that we need to be looking at this as a larger schema when we're thinking about the project. And as it stands, given the decisions that have been made around the funding and the ADA accessibility components, the project really does not give us enough flexibility to preserve any of the right-of-way trees. So as it stands, those would all be slated for removal and replacement. But there is some opportunity for private property trees to be considered and hopefully preserved. So basically when I say that, you know, you look at the outer edge of the sidewalk and then you've got the homeowner properties. There's a really interesting component to this that we learned about today that like technically the city actually owns that.
The right
of way goes into some people's houses. Yeah.
Quick question. Yeah, just to clarify on that point,
Yeah.
you're talking about trees inside the sidewalks.
So I'm talking about
When you said right away.
right of ways. Yeah, sorry, thank
Because the
you.
right of way is actually.
Trees.
beyond that.
Okay, so we're talking
The planter strip.
planter strip
Yeah,
trees.
yeah.
Yes, thank you. So those all are gonna be slated for removal.
And the reason for that is that their critical root zones would be
Yes.
impacted and they're already in a state of, I don't know, condition that we don't think would withstand this type of project. If, you know, it was something where you're just doing sidewalks or, you know, a different
scope,
project,
yeah.
a different scope, and a tree that's in a healthier condition to start with, then that recommendation might be different, but I feel like it's either the street tree improvement project or the preserving the existing, trees that are in the planting strip.
Yeah.
And, and believe me, we would want to present that if that were an option that we would see.
Yes. Thank you for, yeah, perfect. So then moving to the trees that are technically still in the right of way, but outside of the sidewalk, so closer to people's houses. There are a number of trees that we identified today on our walk that will be directly impacted by the project. So that would be where there's some slightly different recommendations. So let me just back up. I'm gonna move into my recommendation section. So right-of-way trees, we're really looking at removal and replacement if we are moving forward with this as it stands. Luckily, you actually have a subject matter expert right here on your very team, Leanne, who has already put together a very robust street tree replacement list, so street tree planting list that exists within your already existing city code. And then we can tease out from there to choose trees that then will be appropriate to replace in those areas. And I'll let Brittany kind of jump into what that might look like. But really getting into that right tree, right place opportunity. So if you've got on the west side, big areas with big open spots, you gotta plant trees that are gonna grow really nice canopies. You've got the spots that are underneath the wires, those are gonna be candidates for slightly smaller trees, so you're not running into those wire conflicts. And also looking at the pest pathogen consideration, planting a diverse palette of trees, and trees like that aren't about to get eaten alive by insects, literally, from our invasive pests. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And then you also have been given, and we can also share this, the opportunity to follow those best management practices for planting and establishment. So you already had put in the original the verbiage about paying for the trees replacements and paying for establishment of those trees. That includes things like watering and maybe a little bit of structural pruning. So that's a huge opportunity to actually get those established. And then actually Leanne has a lot of expertise utilizing specific, there's a thing called civil cells, but there's also some other things, but basically a specific way to set up the trees for success. And then on the private property side of things, that would be a really good opportunity for you all to engage with what we call a registered consulting arborist. So this is like a slightly different type of arborist, who can evaluate the trees, see what the health looks like, determine whether the scope of the project would leave that tree as a candidate for preservation and what some of those scopes could look like. So fencing is a really important one if you're going to try to preserve the trees on the homeowner side, because equipment running over roots and piling up dirt is one of the reasons that trees don't survive construction. So this is a huge opportunity for you to avoid that happening. Yeah, I'll pass to you for more opportunities.
Yeah. So I think just to kind of close our thoughts out on this, I just wanted to talk through what so in my job, oftentimes what ends up happening is that we get called in to look at issues with trees that I feel like can be prevented at the time of planting. I think that trees grown in urban environments, face challenges that are crazy. And they would live a lot longer if things were done differently at the time of planting. So now that we're in this sort of space, I just want to say that this project is also giving us an opportunity to make sure that in the future of Newburgh and River Street, that this isn't going to be a big impact to the trees that we're planting as they get larger. So replanting the right tree in the right place, as we've been saying, is very important for that. And following Leanne's guidance, we've looked at your street tree list, and I would suggest following that and planting diverse species so that you have more flexibility when pest or pathogen comes in. So like if you planted a whole row of ash trees and then we have emerald ash borer here now, you're losing one individual and not the entire street. And we don't know what the pests in the future are going to look like, so just planting more than one type of tree is a way to help us mitigate that. Otherwise, I think proper planting practices, making sure that you have an arborist or a knowledgeable person there when you're replanting the trees. Community engagement is very important, so asking residents what, for input when you're doing the replacement trees so that it's successful. And then just to say that I think it's very maybe disheartening to see some of these very large trees that residents, care about a lot have to come out for a project like this. So some things that I've seen other communities do well is thoughtful things like reusing the wood, right? So maybe milling it and turning it into a bench and putting it in a public park, then that tree is part of the community still. Also, it's nice to think that this street is going to be accessible for more residents in the future. People feel safer riding a bike down the street. All of those things are also important in this conversation. And the trees that will be replacing it with, you know, the canopy will come back. It just is a different time frame than what a lot of us are used to. And yeah, I think with that, I'll just say that, the benefits that urban trees provide us, in this case, like they'll make the, streets safer. People tend to drive slower, on streets that have trees. It increases property value. So residents, you know, that's an impact in the future as well. And then just community health, and well-being. So thank you all for having us and listening to what we have to say, because we find it, or we feel it's very important. Appreciate you. Those are our recommendations.
Yeah, thanks for, giving us that information. That helps a lot. From what I heard. Do you guys have any suggestions on where the trees could be available that are a little bit more mature? For the replacement of the trees that
That's
we're gonna get?
That's a good question, and one that Leanne actually brought up when we met with her earlier.
Okay.
And maybe I'll let you speak to Caliper, but
Sure.
there's maybe different opinions slightly in the arboriculture world about like planting a large tree, or a larger tree versus a smaller tree. Oftentimes a smaller caliper tree, the reason that is planted, frequently is because it has somewhat better, establishment, rates, so it's more likely to survive, and get their roots established in that place than a larger caliper tree. But there's a sweet spot and, you know, variability depending on how it was grown in their nursery, where it's grown and how it's taken care of. So I think having things like the establishment care, like watering, being included in the time of planting for 4 years is very important, as well as structural pruning, and making sure that it's planted in the correct way are all things that are gonna help it to grow faster and in a way that it's successful.
Yeah, so long story short, like, it's actually not necessarily about the size of the tree that goes in and more about how we actually establish said tree. So we chatted and we would recommend probably like a 3-inch caliper tree, which is, you know, substantial, but it is still small. But if done the way that we're talking about as far as establishment and setting it up for success, they will, as we say, caliper up, grow larger pretty quickly. The reason we don't want to put like a 6 or 10-inch tree is because those go through so much transplant shock that in fact they just stay the same size for like 10 years. So you're actually better off putting a 3-inch tree and letting it grow on its own than putting a 10-inch tree and letting it die and having to replace it. Plus a 10-inch tree is very, very expensive to buy and would be nearly impossible to source. So we do have lots of nursery connections that could provide you with that like 3-inch tree, but we're still working on some details. And I think that's probably also open to public comment, or decision, because we haven't written any of that into stone yet.
Yeah, and like we're here as a resource through this process too, if you all have questions that you'd like us to weigh in on, yeah.
Other questions for our experts?
Yeah, I have a feeling, I really appreciate you guys' expertise on this and coming here first off, but I have a feeling that some owners are gonna have follow-up questions on looking at the cross-section of where they're at and seeing what the road's gonna look like, followed by the bike lanes, some green strip, and then sidewalks. It seems like this tree could have been saved, possibly. And that is, I'm not saying it's true, but it's gonna be a tough one to explain out. When, I mean, I assume you guys walked the whole thing and it was the overwhelming majority, if not every single one.
So.
But what makes it every single one as opposed to, yeah?
Yeah, so typically when we look at trees during like construction or improvement projects with the lens of tree protection, what we're looking at to start with is the critical root zone. So if you look at a tree, tree's canopy, sort of like where the largest part of the limb is and where the leaves are, like what is that? We call it the drip zone because that's where, when it rains, you know, this is where the drip is, whatever. Yeah. So that's where all the critical roots exist.
Okay.
And that's the area that you need to protect. Given the, like, even if you just did street improvements, like as the street is now,
Yeah.
would probably still be impacting critical roots. So going an extra, was it 2 feet?
Yeah,
For the bike lane.
yeah.
And then also the sidewalk.
Yeah,
Well,
so basically what it is if you have this as your critical root zone, y'all are talking about cutting all the way through this part of the route and all the way through this part of the route.
which is
So there's
really felt.
Functionally, there will not be enough structural roots left in any of the trees for those to stay standing and not fall over and become an extreme hazard to your community.
I think,
That's the reality.
I think that question was kind of a primer to the next one, which
Great.
was the real concern is outside the sidewalks. Those are the ones that are gonna be harder to explain
Correct.
away.
And that's why you need to budget and pay a consulting arborist who has expertise
Okay.
in construction and trees and have them go and evaluate those. Basically, what I told Jerry today is any tree that is within probably 6 to 10 feet of that outer edge, right, so closest to the house, those are all gonna need to be evaluated for whether they can be saved or not, and implement some protection, tree protection, if they are deemed savable.
How deep is construction?
Well, that's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say, so as a follow-up question for you, so we're looking at about an 8-inch section, 4 inches of concrete over 4 inches of base rock for that sidewalk that would be, roughly at the edge of where the sidewalk is currently, so.
Yeah, so
Is that,
that does help, that minimizes the amount of damage that's done to the roots, really, right, you have to think about like how deep you're gonna go. Structural roots for trees mostly are within the top like 18 inches of soil, so if you're going down 8, it will be kind of tree by tree though, for sure. There's at least a couple that I definitely don't think will be candidates for preservation because we looked at the line and it would effectively be cutting like right next to the tree. But there are certainly quite a lot that we looked at that definitely are likely to be preservable. It kind of just depends on where they fall, because that 1 to 2 foot loose area
And it's
could make their way.
about like seeing what the
Yeah.
roots look like.
Yeah.
Like a lot of it
Yes.
is like, you'll just need to have a consulting arborist on staff during the construction.
I think that what I was getting at was like the overall approach of saying within that planter strip is probably not gonna be possible to save, I get. But
Yes.
the tree by tree decision on the owner's side.
Yep.
And also, I don't know who the risk falls on, so it's like, that's the other part of it is.
Well, and the risk will fall on the homeowner, because the way that
Sorry,
it would.
the choice and the.
Oh, the liability, that's a
Well,
different
the
thing.
choice, I think is
Yeah.
better word than liability.
Sure, sure. And that's,
I think that's the, that you all need to.
y'all, I'm not a lawyer.
Well,
You'll
because-
slowly look at
Yeah, I just took down we had to take down a 40-foot tall magnolia tree in our backyard and it ruined the feel of the backyard. But it's because it had fungal rot and the tree was no longer safe to stay up.
Mhm.
So one of the options was put an anchor in there and make sure it doesn't fall over.
Yep.
Okay, that's a decision that some people can choose to make
Totally,
with their own
definitely.
property. But I think those are the ones that I think it would be helpful to understand what the thought process is there between. Yeah, go ahead.
I think one of the things that the ladies taught me about today, though, which was a new development, was to make sure that there is fencing up in the margins so that equipment, excavation equipment, loaders and such don't drive over areas where there would be roots. So that's not in the primary construction cross-section, but just making it clear to the contractor to avoid secondary root damage, to maximize the chance of things being okay.
Yeah, that's huge.
And also phasing the construction to take care of the road, which is the majority of the mess, and then not having to have big heavy machinery going in just for sidewalks, because I imagine that work scope is very different.
you're absolutely right,
And
much less equipment.
And we're committing to doing all of these things.
Yeah, and I'll mention
Those
that
on-
we do have tree protection fencing details in our design guidelines, and we can specify chain link versus plastic.
Yes.
Yeah, and the chain link is much better.
Yes.
So,
We can also find contractors there.
sure, yeah, but it's typical for, you know, whoever's gonna be producing the construction documents for this portion of the project. Will typically pull from the city's approved standard details, and that's one of them, so.
Well, that's good, because I think, a lot of the proposals or contracts will say like tree protection fencing, and they don't specify the type, but
Chain link, yeah.
it does make a difference.
It makes a huge, and I've seen that on projects, make or break the difference.
Classic that they put up the orange fencing and then start piling stuff on the inside of the orange fencing.
Well, sometimes equipment will just drive right over the
Yeah.
orange, and so it's an important detail to
Yes.
capture.
And to that point, we have 3 engineering inspectors on site when we do these projects, and they're looking to find the contractor if they do anything that's not in these specifications.
And they can post a stop work order if they violate that.
And we did it to Crestview one time.
Are there any other questions for? Okay.
Tried to grow them the best I could.
Are you guys available to answer questions if, you know, my neighbor has questions about follow-up questions on what you guys say or?
We are available to answer questions. It's probably the best to funnel them through
Jared?
staff or, we've had some connections with some of the folks, having direct emails, but just so everybody, I don't know how you wanna handle communications, but I just don't wanna be giving recommendations to any homeowners that are not.
I think it would be really helpful, maybe if we could make like a tree Q&A. So
Yeah.
you can funnel questions to me and then I can get them to, and that way then we can
Yeah,
funnel that same information back to everybody.
yeah, that sounds great. But yes, we are available to questions. That
And I
is.
think it's so incredibly gracious with so many questions on my heart, so. And we talked about maybe having, as we get further down our project pathway, where we're finalizing our tree pit, that land is incredible, but
Yeah.
I can't remember what we talked about, maybe coming back, we're doing an educational presentation for for the street and, just
Yeah.
keeping this relationship as part of our ongoing.
Yeah, we can put you in touch with some potential resources too, for folks in our network that we know that are working. They have maybe trees available or, I don't know, mapping software, things like that.
Just one more thought, Lucas brought it up, but one of the do nothing plan, I think there could be some people that might have renewed interest in that, given the synopsis here. So even with the do nothing plan, it might be important to understand especially the larger trees. You guys mentioned that the disease, end of life, that kind of thing. Is that something that we have more detail on to give to people as they ask that question? I don't know.
Well, we'll definitely be sending follow-ups about emerald ash borer specifically because it's been detected in Newburgh.
Yeah.
And one of the trees that we saw was an ash tree.
That's actually in pretty imminently.
So, and there's also quarantine restrictions about what you can do with that wood material and things like that too. But
between 4th and 5th on the east side, there's 3
Yeah.
huge trees right in a row, for
Yeah.
example, that I know that question's gonna come afterwards about, well, if we do the do nothing plan, would those trees survive?
so I think the recommendation that I would make to those homeowners would be to talk with an arborist.
Okay.
Those homeowners, if they want to know what the actual reality of life and health of the tree is, they should hire a certified arborist with a tree risk assessment qualification and hire them to do a tree risk assessment report and ask them for an evaluation and recommendation. And the thing is, none of those are gonna be in imminent danger, but I would say almost all of them were, well, one of them was imminently deemed as, and it's the one, of course, that's not in front of anyone's house. But the other three do definitely have significant pockets of decay. I don't know the extent of it because we were just on the ground and we weren't hired to do an evaluation today.
And from, to that point, like from the states as a whole, like we're more here to talk about best management practices and like generally like a really high cursory first look and how the individual evaluations. We can't send out like.
I understand that, but it's more of a, that's gonna be a discussion topic
Yeah.
that'll come
Yeah.
after this meeting, and some people will probably bring up, well, do nothing allows me to save those trees in the
Sure.
green space, so.
So a tree risk assessment would give them a little bit more of a vantage on what the actual reality of the risk of the tree is currently. And then they could potentially hire the consulting arborist to give them like, how long do these trees usually live in conditions like this type of data, which is gonna be a guess, but there are lots of resources that they could put in to make a report.
So I think if I put they got to see my face when I learned all of this feedback today. I think one of the tricky things, to your point, we're still in that space that the do nothing plan is not a plan that council will, I can't speak for all of them. I do not think council would support a do nothing plan.
That's fine.
And even the just doing the grinded inlay, we still have to remove every single intersection and replace with ADA, which would still impact those big trees.
Yeah, and the reality is the big trees are all on the corners where you would have to do the ADA compliance. And those big trees are also heating the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So you would still have to do sidewalk reno on those big, so like
There's
you're
text to the trees.
you're just in a bad spot for those specific trees.
So the clarity on the ADA though, I thought that was only if there was an improvement project with ADA.
You know, it's, you're gonna grind it in, like, any kind of pavement project will trigger the ADA
Two-step
improvements.
process.
You know, it's a federal requirement.
No, I understand if it is considered an improvement. I thought this was in that gray area of,
No,
No, so like, I think Will may have mentioned, you know, the city's going through a series of different kinds of overlay, grinding inlay projects. Every one of those has triggered ADA improvements at those intersections. So they've been chasing those all to get them done ahead of these basically street rehab. And they're just street rehab projects. These are not complete reconstruct projects.
In southern districts for the last 3 years, we've been putting in hundreds of thousands of dollars of ramps and sidewalk sections to do the right thing. And when I say the right thing, I say it because it's not just the law. Jacob, it's not just the
no,
law.
if it is the law, that's fine, that's enough. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
if it is actually the law, that's what matters. That's to me, that's, if it's a requirement, totally understood. If there's a section that is being interpreted,
No,
We wouldn't be spending the money.
no, I understand. But believe me, go back 3 meetings, this topic came up, it was unclear, and I'd have to go back into the details of it. This is one that was unclear in discourse if we go back several meetings.
but Jacob, can I say this right?
Yeah.
There's nobody here to speak for people in wheelchairs.
Sure.
And so it's okay, is it okay for me to say the words?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is the right thing to do.
I agree. Again, it's the discourse after this meeting where there are people who are gonna ask about this, if the grinding inlay is something that doesn't trigger an ADA thing that forces tree removal. And if that is the rule in the law, then it's clear that this is the right thing to do. Also, the fact that city council likely would need to improve it. So.
I'll add just if I can, that code enforcement is ongoing throughout the city with regard to ADA compliant sidewalks. It's not just River Street.
Right.
And that is something that I work closely with our code enforcement officers on a regular basis where trees are concerned. And there's sidewalk, upheaval impact assessments that I go out and do all the time.
Okay.
So River Street is no exception. So.
Yeah, that clarity I think is good because it basically, if there is not another option, if that's the case.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for helping us. I'm sorry. I know. Yeah, we'll be in touch. We're happy to support you all in the next phases and steps, and we wish you luck and are glad that people are talking about this and thinking about this. I'll leave it with, as we were meeting and getting our first emails about this, I was like, well, 90% of the communities we get calls like this from are people who just eminent domained it, sent a notice out that their trees had to be removed and went and removed the trees the next day. So you are very lucky in saying that Newburgh is Newburgh because it's special for a reason. So this is really awful. I like really hate seeing large trees have to go. But at least you're giving them thought and we have the opportunity to do our best in the next phase of trees on River Street.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, already, I think we'll go back now to what the original top of our agenda and maybe we can have a conversation around.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I guess, so yeah, our team, Jennifer, do you have
The
that,
roll plot?
the roll plot might be,
Okay.
yeah.
So just a little heads up, though, it's gonna be hard to see on the screen,
Okay,
just as,
I would suggest, because it's such a strange shape for the screen. And it might be better to lead people around that.
actually, while we do this, okay,
It's
Yeah.
so much more legible.
Okay.
It's impossible.
maybe I'll just say maybe just a handful of things, just, as we go around, that way, not, there'll be intermittent conversations, obviously, but just to share with the group, so. I think in the last 3 weeks, our team, took, Jim Holt's section and ran it through, so again, typical section, TJ's been really good to keep emphasizing, this is just, looking at the approximate impacts through the project, right? And we're still looking at it in a very two-dimensional way, we don't have surveys, so we ran through, 2 12-foot lanes, 2 5-foot bike lanes, the curb and gutter, the stormwater facilities and the sidewalk, and then that construction approximate buffer out, on each of these strip maps from 3rd through 11th. As expected, it fits pretty well because it pretty closely matches, the width of the existing section from, center line to back of walk. So I think that's the first thing you'll notice. Our guys, tried to note, quite a few places through the project where the back of the existing sidewalk is, just to give you that context, because that's probably the easiest thing to get a feel for how this section. And again, I want to keep using the words approximate because this is pre-survey, so we're hesitant to say anything definitive, but it does fit pretty well within the existing improvements. So backwalk matches, as I said. I know we've talked about the sidewalk meandering, so there's some potential options there. Could meander. That actually I had that bullet point before we just heard this. So as an option to protect trees, but it does not sound like that's going to be an option within the landscape zone. You'll see at the beginning and the end of the project, some transitions from the protected bike lane to the existing bike lanes on either end of the street. So there's basically a share of thought comes into this protected bike box, and then delineating striping to basically bring it up into that. Yeah. On the map, I think you guys, so I apologize, I missed the last meeting, so a lot of this I'm just getting relayed from TJ, what was covered, but you had requested to look at what a raised intersection would look like. So 9th Street displays a raised concrete intersection. So I'm not gonna lie, it's difficult to tell from a flat piece of paper what that's actually gonna look like, so just very roughly, you're gonna see it's slightly, I think it's a slightly larger footprint than the rest
A
of
little
the.
bit, yeah.
Um, yeah, it's concrete. I think TJ had shared at the last meeting, some examples, some pictures of, a project in McMinnville and a project in Beaverton where they've got some raised intersections similar to this. So that's gonna be a lot better feel than honestly just looking at the piece of paper, but this will give you a little bit of a feel, for what that looks like. So it's a plan view. One item to note, and I apologize because our guys were racing for the last 2.5 weeks to crank all this out. So there was an error, a minor error in the exhibits that you all were shown that we corrected in this. And the error in the online displayed exhibits showed that the curb runs through some of those high power poles. So we corrected that in this exhibit. So just a minor note, but we did make that change after we had sent that to you all. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Percy,
That's
anything else?
we're trying to not relocate those high voltage poles. And with some tweaks also to the online street, trying to avoid it was actually it's different from the southeast corner. The ADA ramp is different, trying to preserve the high voltage pole. That's all it is.
I don't know if there's maybe any questions before we want to just take a look
I
or.
think that your item 5.2 might have some, like, just reading that out. With some of the discussions I think you're gonna come up around especially the corners, what the intent of, does that make sense, Jerry? This right here, I think has some like, maybe guidance towards what some of the goals are, and this might want to see, especially after corner, where there's some parts that are currently going into people's yards, right? So you wanna.
Maybe you could just mention one more thing too. We're gonna have to keep saying this. We're at 10%. So
Yeah,
don't think there's nothing on here that is,
Okay.
gospel line work.
No, but I think that,
So,
like, just the trying to stay out of the existing, yard areas, especially corners, I know is gonna be challenging, and I think there's gonna be a lot of questions that come up about that.
yeah. And realistically, those questions won't be answered until we get survey, whoever the consultant is, gets survey and actually starts in that design process. Some of these, we tried to show kind of what might be a worst case scenario, as far as what the elevation difference might be between the back of the walk to the street. So there.
Jim Talk plan on what it looks like for the street, for the measurement part. It's not set in stone yet, because we haven't done any of the surveys yet.
That's right, yeah. And
So if there's anything that we see, oh, can we put something here, can we put something here? That's, that's part of this process of what we're doing.
right, and there will be a lot of good questions that come up as the design progresses, and if indeed the ad hoc committee is part of that, I mean, that's when those kind of questions would really filter out. But one of the things you just can't say right now with any certainty is we've got a typical section.
Yeah.
But there's nothing typical that happens outside of that section. So everybody's yard, everybody's, where we're interacting is slightly different. So that's where it's like, we can't definitively say this is what it's gonna look like through the entirety of the project because of that.
Right.
So,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
At what point or what percentage does it become finalized?
After it's built. Yeah.
After,
That's the most honest answer I can give you. 30% we're nailing down. We've got the survey. We're trying to nail down. I don't want to overspeak here because this is Percy's area of expertise.
No,
30% we're doing horizontal design, just trying to see how it actually fits within the actual survey. 60% we're really starting to explore and look what the vertical elements are and how. This is it's a 3-dimensional puzzle, right? So everything we're doing, it all interacts with each other, including all of your frontages. So we're trying to make sure that everything works from the ADA grades to the storm drainage to the road profile to, all of these different elements have to work together to meet design criteria. So at 60%, you're starting to nail down a lot of that vertical. By 90%, you've got a pretty good design. At that point, you're just kind of fine tuning elements. There might be little tweaks and details there, and then you put out a set of construction documents that would go to bid. And at that point, you know, there's still gonna be some things because again, no piece of paper is gonna represent the field perfectly. So there's still gonna be some tweaks in construction that would be, you know, have to be dealt with. But 90%, you're pretty well set on most of the design, I would say, so.
I have a quick question just on the treatment differences between what appears to me very similar streets. There's on Fifth Street, it shows the sidewalk continuing straight through, and then on Eighth, it jogs into the yard. And those streets, you know, the setbacks are very similar, and there's a high power pole on the corner of both of those intersections. But I want clarity on why they're so different, like what treatment, so that.
Are you talking about the jog on the sidewalk?
Yeah, there's a jog into the yard on Eighth Street, whereas.
Yeah, I was looking at that, this morning, actually, yeah. With that, with the ramp run being, you know, 7.5%, trying to come up to, the height of the, elevation of the sidewalk, that's our plan. What I was thinking, we can reduce that jog by not, you know, having 2 ramp runs. So on the first ramp run, it will be 7.5, you get to a point, and then to the, you know, turning space, which should be 1.5% in each direction. And then you have 2 more ramp runs to each of the sidewalks. So one going to the east and one going to the north. And that way we'll reduce the job. Still, we're gonna have to do that job to line up with the ADA ramp on the other side, on the south side.
I guess my question is, how did you not have to do a jog on Fifth Street? If that's a requirement for Eighth, because it's very, very similar intersection. There's a very short, I think it's, well, that's not it.
It's Sixth Street, you're thinking.
Well, Sixth is a little different because the setback from the street on Sixth is quite a bit more.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of space within it.
Yeah.
But Fifth Street is actually a lot more similar.
Oh, that's true.
Eighth.
My 2 cents is I wouldn't try to interpret too much at this point. It's just, it's very, very conceptual. Yeah, those. Again, the goal will be minimizing impacts. That's gonna be the goal, but we still have certain grades, certain criteria we've got to meet to do sure. So
That was my main point about the next agenda item, which I'm not gonna read, but it's basically saying we're trying to commit to not taking land from yards. And so when we see a roll plot that does that, it's like, we want to approve a plan, but we also want to try and stick to the commitment of not take away from yards. And so when the plan shows that, how do we reconcile those? And that's gonna be a challenge.
and a thought on that is you're not approving this plan, you're approving a typical section, would be my understanding, right? So it's, this is not going to be the way it's gonna look when it's built. So this is just a first glossy overview run of what this would look like.
That's helpful.
Yeah,
So it would be like approving kind of the widths of.
Yeah.
And then as a committee, because we'll hopefully would have voice in at that 30-ish%, just like we'll see things.
I would expect there to be feedback the whole way through. I mean, it's not for the next 3-4 years. This isn't just a thing that just happens. And unlike all your other city managers, I'll still be here.
So the 2-year commitment is not expanded to a 4-year commitment.
Can I bring up? I'll try not to get too long-winded in this, but I'm really trying to, as a avid bicycle rider and somebody, I am also representative of Cycle Yamhill County. Thinking a lot about bicycle infrastructure. I've been commuting my whole life and have a lot of lived experience. My family rides with me. And all the way from young kids. And so I do have concerns about, I don't exactly know, so Jim could maybe answer some of these, but I have concerns about a 5-foot bike lane with a 90-degree draw curve, which I think is the current design. If you do that sort of design with an automobile lane, a bad maneuver from a child or an older adult into the road, off of that curb into the roadway could cause a significant crash or injury. So I think it's worth exploring other options, that stay within the existing size or somewhere close to it. But there's, alternatives like, at the same grade as the roadway, but using a curb separate, so they call it a traffic separator. Basically a floating curb that is separating the bike lane and the automobile travel lane. And so I think it is important at some point. I don't know when, if it's later or now. I know you just built this, but I do think it's important to consider that. And my writing and my research, you rarely see a minimum. 5 foot is the minimum size for a bike lane. One with a 90-degree curve drop off. It's really not something you see much. And so I think we would see a reduction in users with that sort of setup. So.
Yeah, TJ's response was in agreement with you. So I think that it was just shown as a vertical curb. And there wasn't a lot of thought in that. Typically we would see more of a roll mountable curb in that type of situation. So I know there's been conversations. I actually wasn't part of the last meeting, so I know they've landed on the protected elevated bike lane. So I don't want to speak into conversations that I wasn't part of either.
Yeah, I wasn't a part of that conversation either. I saw the plan the first time and there hasn't been an opportunity for me to speak into it, but I think it's, as a citizen, I don't live on River Street. I think it's important for us to, especially in this early design phase, to consider a safer design than a curb that drops off into the roadway. It doesn't make sense in this scenario for trying to come up with the best design.
If I can speak to that, if we do that, then we're gonna be able to stay within the 58 feet that we want to keep. We're trying to keep the existing bulk of sidewalk with the same improvements that we're doing. So that'll increase the footprint. If we
Yeah, it could slightly. And sure, the impact could be a little wider, but also the impact is a roadway that's safer for people moving, which is a very high goal for engineering for a project like this. And so, yes, there is a trade-off. And I would say the trade-off is worth considering.
Yes, no, definitely. I agree. Yeah.
The impact with, you're just talking about the floating curb width that gets added to the typical section, or is it beyond that?
Oh, I was gonna say, if we want to increase, 5 foot is a minimum for a bike lane, right? If we want to increase that for user traffic.
I think 5 feet is fine. It's directional.
Is it
right?
not that
So on a directional lane where there's not multiple, people passing by, I think 5 feet is wide enough. So it is talking about
The curb.
floating curve.
So your main concern is regarding the
Floating curve is about, I think, all can do is about a foot. And a vertical, like a plastic baller, those are like 8 inches. So they are slightly. Yeah.
That would mean we're going back to one of the earlier designs, and it would create the offset discussion again because of the power lines.
I think it's in the same, it doesn't impact, it's just, you've got 5 feet that's elevated or 5 feet that's down. It's in the same space.
Plus the curb, plus the raised curbs, or you'd have to reduce the size of the road surface. So you are widening the section slightly.
Well, I mean, you have a 6 foot planter, right? Planter strip.
Right, that's what it's.
So there might be some small reduction in that, but it doesn't redo the entire, I think, or kind of the spacing.
Are you talking about not having the bike path at the sidewalk grade, but having that at street grade?
Yes, That's what I mean, that's one of the options that
And
creates
the
a,
divider, what do you mean by divider? You mean physical raised element of some kind?
well, there's multiple, there's.
As opposed to little striping.
Right, right. So instead of, I mean, if you go on Elliott, there's a double striping. If you could imagine, instead of a double striping, you have a curve. It's a traffic separator. to
Yeah,
the-
yeah,
it's
okay.
technical.
I haven't seen that.
16 inches by 4 inches long.
So
Yeah,
can I go over here and just draw something, make sure I have anything to talk about? You're saying that there's
that always
The black
happens, by the way.
a sidewalk like here, and then there's a planter strip like here. And then, there's a curve when we get down the street, now we come over here, and now there's something raised here, and then there's the
Yep,
traffic light like this, is that right?
exactly right.
Yeah, I've seen that before. Yeah, well, I sure don't want to add anything to the controversy that adds to the discussion, but I think we could talk about that for a long time. The problem I have with this is this takes us back to, as Will was saying, the other designs. One of them has, they were all the bike lanes were at street level. And one of the problems with that is it changes the radius, the curve radius, and that's what runs you into the power poles. Because the curve radiuses are different, now they're interfering with the power poles. And the whole point of doing this, raising it up, was it allowed for a different radius for that curve, and it avoided just narrowly some of the existing power poles. And at least that's my recollection of it. So that
And
was
Jim,
a couple weeks ago.
and I'm sorry, mate, that was considered the last meeting and all those options were looked at in the context of the power poles and residents' desires to retain their frontage as much as humanly possible.
Right, and I'm speaking for the rest of citizens to say that we would like a safe path to go from the Newburgh Dundee bypass into the city of Newburgh, that kids, if they make a swerve on their handlebars and they fall into traffic, that they don't have the risk of being hit by a vehicle. I think it's extremely important to consider that option, and it's worth our time. We just went through this whole conversation of we're very early in the process, and I think it's extremely important to consider something like this. There are other things you can do. You can have a small barrier rather than going bike lane 90-degree curve. You can have a small barrier between the bike lane and the curve. So I don't know what exact size, but I have seen that. I think you run into the same issue with a mountable curb where one swerve and you're into the roadway. That's design is just, that's an old style of doing roads, and I just don't think it's appropriate for this.
Well, respectfully, I
Yeah.
totally disagree. For example, we're concerned about child safety or anybody's safety, and adult safety. And I'll tell you, when I ride in Newburgh, and I ride a giant NRS, by the way, that's 30 years old, but it still runs good. I usually ride up on the pedestrian thing, because I don't like riding in the street, because I don't trust all the people coming up behind me in their cars texting and stuff, particularly the teenagers. But I find that being up here with this curve, and here I am riding my bike, is a better situation than being down here and just having, a divided line with some stripes on the street. To me, I feel really exposed to all those cars coming behind.
That's why I would never recommend that. That's why the
That's what you see in most code right now. The other thing is you're concerned about a fall off this, well, let me go back to where I was. A fall off this abrupt center.
Right.
And the opportunity for a child or an adult to fall over into the traffic lane. Well, I would suggest that this little raised thing here, you know what? you can careen into this and go askew and fall over into the traffic lane just as easy, maybe even easier, because this is an abrupt, we'll call it a trip hazard for a bicycle. And if you hit that, you're gonna be tumbling.
So,
But if there's a lane on the road here and you hit a line, you don't tumble, you go, oh crap, I'm over the line.
so Jim, I appreciate your conversation on that. If you want to dig into the data and research on it, you're incorrect on the safety of that, though. It is actually proven to be safer to have that floating concrete traffic separator than it is to have a 90-degree curve. So that's what I mean, if you look at current studies and research, road for bicycle design for bike lanes, it's definitely that's the direction. So, yeah, I wanted to put that out in.
Sure.
Yeah. I think we talked about that last meeting and if you have that curve, I mean, it's not a curve, I mean, it's kind of like a slight curve to a higher, it prevents like a car from, I mean, if I hit that curve while I'm driving, I know I'm gonna be hitting the bike lane and go back to my lane. And that's the whole purpose of what that race
Yeah,
area is.
What we actually talked about in the last meeting was this versus this.
Right.
Was this, the driver kind of feels that they're riding up on the curb.
Yeah.
The bicyclist kind of feels that they're coming off the
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to this, where it's a sudden whoops. And that's what we discussed the last meeting.
Right. So it's, I mean, it's a safety thing too that's why we chose that design for the bike lane and the jogging lane. For the safety of, cars, oh, I'm going on the curb. And the bikers, oh, I'm getting out of that curb, I need to go back.
okay, I hear I don't have a ton of support here, but if we were in a place where people were thinking forward with bicycle lanes and safety, I guarantee you this conversation would be different. And I will commit to continuing to work on this and continue working with the engineers and
In the context of
thank you.
I think in the context of a new street, people might be in more favor of what you're proposing, but given the width that we have to deal with. And the very strong opinions about not losing people's yards, including city council people who are not even here mentioning that before this ad hoc kicked off. Working within the confines of that 58 feet is very important to everyone in Newburgh, not just the people who live on the street, but for what it means for future projects, precedents, things like that.
Yeah, I think we're still with what I'm bringing up, still within that space.
Yeah, I mean, if we are, I don't think that anyone would push back, but to his point, I think there were some nuanced details that prevented that from being,
Yeah,
an extra 12-inch wide curb does pose serious challenges at corners. And I'm sure you're racking your brain thinking of where those are.
Well, I was trying to remember the aha moment I had a couple months ago when I looked at that and, I went, oh, well, if we just do this, suddenly we don't have a power pole problem.
Right.
And I said, well, why is that? What's the difference? I realized it's the radius.
Yeah.
And if you extend the asphalt, the radius has changed and now you've got an issue with power poles again. So that was the whole point.
yeah, so if it's not at the grade of the road, which I think is the strongest option with a traffic separator, some vertical separation, whether that's a curb or bollards or whatever you call them. Then I do think potentially a barrier, some sort of separation between the bike lane and the curb itself. So I don't know, people use different things in different areas. There's pavers, there's some sort of strip, so that you're coming off the bike lane before you would go into the street. Sort of a
Rumble strip
concept. And so I think, in lieu of actually putting it what I believe to be a safer space. There are other ideas.
And I don't know if switching the curb and gutter is and using a, that modified curb, which is 1 foot wide, then it raises on a slope from 1 to 4 inches. That will create a better
Safer.
safer is in case a kid or a biker, let's say,
Yeah.
in kind of falls on the thing.
Yeah.
It probably quickly come back to the bike lane.
A mountable curb.
Now, on the other side, driver, Friday night, he might
Go up.
easily jump on top of the driver. So it's one or the other. Also, like we said, at this point, this is just not even 10%. So there is room to improve.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Do you want to do some walkabout and ask
Yes.
questions?
Here's the thing too, when you're over there.
Yeah, we'll just leave it running.
Yeah.
Look back.
So,
Zero set or ever seen or heard.
No, they. Shall, it's fine. They, we have to.
This is my.
So you guys. And it's, you know how it writes, like this, sometimes it's even. It's a much simpler design. That's great. Also, if you look at. Because that's the outside. That's where the price is. Everything but. Yeah. Then I can see. When I was trying to say, it's not really the tool that this section in was really the connection about right. And that's like the process. Another. So that should be here.
So that, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Before I gotta come back argue. That's what I got. So I'm just go, yes. How that right. So if that's not. Area to have to slow down. Artist, you're gonna hug a power pole in here. Okay, and this is again. It's just asking. Oh, maybe he's not.
Yeah. And then everything.
So there's, I don't know, I feel it's just not the way I read But there's been like 5 minutes we were on school. Yeah. But those are some of the, that maybe, okay. So, I don't know. It's like, research is clear that the state wireless down here. You don't mind this. That's where the. But that's where. Bring it down. If you bring it down here. It's those. Yeah. Other areas. I know there's. Very funny. That could be a training here. All right. So it's like you said, you can bring the onions down to that I see, and just go down. Actually, it's high school. You take naturally, the height of the road is behind the side of the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he said it's. Something was.
But, hey, Jim. Do you mind leaning forward? If we, so. Yes. So there would be the.
Yeah, so there, you
Probably trying to keep the sidewalk. Here's the sidewalk.
All right. I gotta go. Works are slowing down, the doctors are being there.
That's the only most time, so.
Yeah.
Is that better than the
Oh, yeah. Like, I just tried to draw it out here. Yes. So that's what's. Also happy elevate other plans.
That is probably really happy.
I don't, I still.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So I think. I absolutely love these.
Like. Right. I understand, you're right.
What happened to that? There. Well, this is. It's really. Well,
Well, I guess that I.
You might looking at Fifth Street.
And, I typically think it's right.
Yeah, right.
So.
Right now.
I'd like to
that's
see.
what it does. So I know it's
I like work.
I would, as Oh,
I appreciate that.
I was trying to. Something out there.
Yeah.
No.
That's a very polished design.
See?
What it does is
This creates this concern by asking. Scissors. I just want to actually comment.
Yeah, so, I'm constantly, you keep the trust in here. I've been enjoying this part a long time. This right here, I think this small is.
Well, that's why. Okay.
That's very interesting. So. I thought, we're gonna use us, but.
No way.
Yes. So, is it fairly common to ask?
I feel like he's right. Now Anyway,
Oh, yeah, office. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And then.
Will the whole family go?
The in-laws have. So no, it's just me.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. You ought to go back there though. That area, you should see like. That's what I like to see.
Yeah, I want to be special.
That's big city stuff.
They get a good tax position, but there's no tax on retirement.
You gotta make it up somehow, so it's probably higher, property taxes and sales tax.
You make choice. How big your house is? You've got your big choice now. I just.
No, I really,
I feel so much security. My parents or anything. Those wouldn't be taxable.
It seems like.
I actually don't. I know that they're property taxed in Ohio.
I'm just going like states where
Yeah.
don't do sales tax.
I mean, I don't know if that's changed. I grew up in Connecticut, but yeah, I know. I had friends that went I think they did it. They lived somewhere right next to the border, expecting to pay. I can't remember though.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, where they're.
Maybe.
I now understand. But I really try.
Now, this is very interesting. Right, capture does not cite your age, general, state, oral, sales tax, retail goods. But there are the use of that. Here's the retirement income tax. I thought I know sales. That's the property taxes have so very large. Sure. Yeah, oh, sure. I thought it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
So, no shades. Shades of
I'm not here. I'm here. Yeah.
Legislation, too much control and all.
Sidewalk.
I would open the light.
Well, there's a group out here by the Trappist Abbey. And I went to it for the first time a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I think it is really. Yeah, it's big and they, I mean, they've got a nice area for, nice barn area. weddings, anniversaries. I want to check out, then the pub inside, you know, I've got all the stainless steel equipment where they make their own beer.
So you can see the brewing going.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's, they've got, they planted, I guess, 2 years ago. Hops. So they got hops outside of the road.
Doing the whole thing.
Yeah, and then they've got this big, huge hall. And that's what they heard about. You've got this map with all these trees and stuff right there. It's another covered area that they had, big screen TV in there. And we were watching, some of the, soccer. And it was cool. And then they've got their own, this trailer, food call trailer.
Is it newer?
Yeah, well, it'd been around for like 3 or 4 years, and then some new owners just bought out a lot of like 2 years ago.
Yeah. Right there, yeah.
It is gorgeous.
What is that? And then like. Yeah. Yeah. I'm still the same.
Oh, yeah.
I like to make a mold. Set it, that's something. I see that.
It's you.
Yeah, we were all the water.
It's over 100 years old. Is it?
And I have a pretty large willow tree who's probably gonna be in.
Yeah, mine's, I have 1898, I think.
1898?
Yeah, wow.
So yours, yours. A farmhouse.
Yeah, there is.
And then have a foundation.
Three, high level, width, any additional engineering questions before we talk about, 5.2?
I guess I want to, do you know the cost of like a raised, intersection? What would the final cost of the raised intersection be as opposed to a non-raised intersection? Just a ballpark.
We didn't, but we can come back to you.
That's something we can
Yeah.
get for the group,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I apologize, we're
That's
very
okay.
safe to get this. Yeah, we can.
On those raised intersections, do we know the safety benefits? Is there data or research on that or experience anecdotal?
That's something we could also follow up on, we could have maybe any kind of fact sheet that we could track down on that.
Slowing cars down, I mean, any sort of like traffic.
So TJ had highlighted them specifically as being a really good traffic calming measure to help slow traffic rate of speed.
Yeah.
So,
I just think if it's gonna be talked about, it should probably be included with like, here's the safety features as well. That might be a stronger selling point of slowing vehicle.
Yeah, I don't know how much was anecdotal, what he knows, or just based on his project experience, but
Yeah.
we can ask him if he knows of any studies or anything that's been done like that. So.
He hasn't named a specific price point yet, so I don't know either.
Yeah, that or like compared to like just putting a stop sign on there instead of the race. What's the difference between the raised one or put a stop sign, is it the same? And the cost wise would probably be a lot cheaper for the stop sign.
The only thing with stop signs, then you base your rear end, collisions.
Say that again.
with a stop sign, you're increasing your rear end, incidents.
Oh, rear end,
Yeah.
okay.
Not people are paying attention. They're not paying attention.
That's it.
I've got stop signs in front of my house and I've never seen rear end collision on that intersection. I mean, since I've been there.
On that, there is data that proves that, I can follow up with you.
Okay.
There are other cost considerations to be had too, because the raised intersections would make it so that you wouldn't have to jog into people's yards as much, so fences, trees that get taken out potentially by that, that's a cost consideration too.
I can see that for consideration, and I will say too, the longevity of a concrete intersection versus the, you know, the lifespan for asphalt.
Yeah, to know when the road is older, there will be less ground and inlay cost by having to not do some sections.
So, with that potentially, because I read like the email exchange about kind of that, your neighborhood specifically, or your corner specifically, would that be something that you could say, like, as part of, like, when we're in our 60-70%, when we have a survey, it makes sense to do a raised here to preserve this yard versus, it makes more sense to have a stop sign here?
Yeah, that question doesn't need to be answered at this point. I mean,
That would be part of an ongoing.
that could be part of the ongoing, yeah. So typically by 60%, we want to nail down the vertical design. So at that point, you'd want to know if there's a raised or a non-raised intersection.
Yes.
So
you probably can't answer this question at this point, at the 10% point, but is it even possible to get a commitment to stay within the current 58-foot corridor, even at intersections, if you consider raised intersections?
So that probably leads to this next
So
discussion
that takes us
topic, right?
Into our point two, since. So I think, I mean, you want to continue your kind of thought process around that question that takes us into 5.2, or?
For me, the whole point is not coming into people's yards. That's really from the beginning, kind of my thrust. I think, I know the city owns the right of way, I understand that, but I feel like if we can get a commitment from the city, I know there's been talk of from counselors, from the mayor, that they want to stay within that 58-foot footprint. But, you know, that's just talk until there's actually a written commitment. And I don't know if the city's willing to give that commitment. I don't know if it's possible at this stage.
You want to start with the possible piece? I mean,
Yeah. So the challenge, you know, at this point, and I'm just coming from the engineering side of things, you know, we've got a typical section, and anytime you've got something like that, that's the constraints you're aiming to work with. If this was a brand development and we were doing this in a green field, I could say with pretty good certainty, yeah, we're not going to go outside of that. The challenge is we don't have a typical section outside of the typical section. So this is going to interact with everybody's front yards, driveways, everything along the entire route. So to say with certainty that this is the limits of how this typical section will interact with everybody's, you know, frontages is extremely difficult. And honestly, it's unknowable at this point.
Right.
Um,
Too granular.
yeah.
but there wouldn't ever be a scenario where we would say, this is we want a 12-foot, 5-foot, 6-foot, 5-foot, and then suddenly we're like, actually, we want 15 feet.
Right. So that, if you're locking into that, that would be the decision you would be making, and that would be driving everything else. It's just on the very back end. It's like, how do these grades all play out? And then where do they tie into based on, you know, the topography of the, you know, the back of those sidewalks once we put in this new section. There may be, you know, they may go a foot beyond for some people. It may not touch anybody, you know, for, you know, several blocks. It's just impossible to say until you get that survey. You can actually see like, okay, this is how it's going to interact with this driveway or this yard, or, you know, this person's, you know, fence comes out a little bit further than this one. So the challenge is because we don't have a typical section behind the typical section. So you're gonna make it work as well as you can with minimal impacts, but I don't think my 2 cents is I wouldn't want to say that from the city side because there's just no way to guarantee it, so.
I guess just when we got the roll plot, I was surprised to see it coming into my yard 5 feet. But talking to Percy, it sounds like there are, there's flexibility still, quite a bit of flexibility, so that.
Yes, this, consider this more like a cartoon, and then it's gonna get closer and closer to reality as it moves forward, yeah.
Do you wanna say something?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this isn't a granular commitment, but I can give you two commitments. I can give you the commitment that this can be an objective in the request for proposals. So that will be in the written request for proposals. And I can give you a stronger commitment, which is my word of honor, that I will endeavor to minimize the impact to yours and everybody else's yard. And my word of honor is worth a lot. So I can do both of those things. We just can't say for certain exactly.
Yeah.
But we can say we can make that a primary objective of the operation in line with the concept.
Would the committee entertain a motion?
Sure.
And before I make a motion, I think I want to say, in the community, there's an understandable, probably everybody, occasional distrust of government. And I think our local government has demonstrated that they're the most trustworthy group of the lot. And I think we should have some confidence in our local government and ourselves and trust them. And having said that, I would like to make a motion that the committee recommend to City Council that the city proceed to develop the existing design concept.
Second. Sorry, can I?
Just a motion and a second, so now there's space for conversations.
I just want to be so clear. It means there's still a lot of room for, we're adopting a concept, right?
Yes.
Okay, we're not adopting anything absolutely for certain, right? There's still a lot of room to make adjustments and changes, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Absolutely.
No, I think that's a really good question. So that this motion would say these widths
Mhm.
would be start the process to get to 30%.
And allow the chair to do a survey as well, is that part of what this would do?
If
the city council
approved by council.
Yeah.
What's the survey? Sorry.
No, that's where they go out and get the specific.
Oh, this survey.
Sorry.
No. Can I ask one more clarifying item?
No,
The
absolutely.
city guidance is 5 feet wide, bike lanes and ADA. I believe both of those are covered in the city guidance for road design. Is that right? Or is it only bike lane?
Those were both recommended widths.
Yeah.
So and moving us to this design is actually somewhat more like the typical section actually for the widths.
Yeah, all I was gonna ask was flexibility to use 4 feet at intersections to preserve people's yards. Is that in consideration? Because it still meets code. For at least 88, or for sidewalks, I'm not sure.
Well, if I put it like this, right, if we have a primary RFP objective of attempting to preserve 58-foot width.
Yeah.
That will have that effect.
Over the city guide, or the recommended, I forget what the right term is, but the city has recommendations on what a street should look like.
Yes, but the point of doing a bespoke design, which I always wanted for River Street.
Yeah.
And not ram something down people's throats like Elliott Road, which wasn't my fault. Was to have engagement with folks and come up with a design that works for the city and for the residents. So if there needs to be design exceptions, that is fully within the capability of the chosen company.
Okay, and that is clear to them now that that's within the scope of what you guys are allowed to do is. Because I don't think it's always the case that they're given the scope to say it can go from 5 to 4. They might be told to stick with 5 no matter what, right?
Perhaps in a different time in this city's history.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it could be given a project with the intent being.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and so I'm saying it's the intent to preserve land over.
right.
Yeah.
And I'm saying if it's the will of this group, that a primary objective would be the preservation number
Yep.
over other design factors.
That instills a lot of confidence in me to proceed forward, I guess why I brought that up, because that is one of the knobs to play with to make it more amenable to people at corners, is being able to utilize that, so.
Just to add to that, I would say if it is going to go wider than that 58 foot, to understand why and what's the reason, what's the benefit, or what's the technical reason for that. But to give some leeway for engineers and city to make decisions and provide that input when needed. So we're not limited by a number for a design feature if it's gonna have an impact that's negative for.
No, I mean, yes, I agree with that too, but to still have it as a primary objective.
Yeah.
And then if there are reasons that come up through the survey and then the design process, where there's some place where we can't stay to that, communicate with the people impacted.
Yeah, typically, the lane widths are not gonna change, right? I mean, that's gonna be pretty standard. Your bike lane is typically not going to, neck down or change. The landscape strip, there might be some variability there. When you get out to the sidewalk, honestly, typically we try to maintain the 5 foot. That's kind of almost a universal standard at this point. You neck down typically to 4 foot when you've got vertical obstructions. Where you would see it going beyond that 58 foot is because of what it would take to actually tie into the existing landscape. So sometimes you might have like a steep driveway that you gotta catch. So we're up at this grade,
It takes longer to get.
it takes longer to
Create the
get there.
correct
So
angle.
it's not that the section itself would go wider, it's more about tying into the existing environment behind it, so.
So someone's not going foot thump.
I mean, the way I see this is we approve a design. Then it moves forward. If there's any changes in the design, it goes back to us to like look at it or approve it, right? I mean, that's where the phases are.
Yeah.
So we'll have a initial design. Any changes to that, it goes to the ad hoc committee to review.
I mean, having some primary things to work with lets us start an RFP.
Yeah.
Like if we know with the direction we're trying to go in, we can I can go and ask permission to spend money, right? And then from there, if we do run into something, we would check with the people.
Yeah.
But but Ted, you've known me for years, I'd have checked with the people anyway.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, well, I'm just letting everybody know.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, if there's like a change of, I don't know, more than 10% of the design, then it goes to us to approve it.
Yeah, it's
And
something.
to everybody that's affected about
It
it.
will continue to be an interactive process.
Yeah.
Because there'll be decisions to make that are local decisions. Around stylistic elements or other things.
Another discussion. Technical question, do we need to include the inclusion of the 50 feet in the RFP?
I think we would do this one and then do another one. Do this motion and then do another motion to capture that thought.
Okay. All right, any other discussion on this first motion? So motion a second, all in favor?
Aye.
And perhaps a second motion could be formed something like, a motion that the city will endeavour to stay within a 58-foot section in the RFP requirements if at all possible.
Term primary objective you had in there earlier, I liked that wording.
Okay. Okay,
Is that okay?
the city will endeavor as a primary objective, you getting this, of the RFP to maintain a 58-foot section if at all practical. How does that grab you? I'm tired.
Technical, comment? Sure. Sorry, 58 feet could go like this, obviously, right? So it's trying to maintain it within the, not going into people's.
Existing roadway.
The current center line.
Maintaining.
I just wanted to make sure.
Hey, read that back and I'll add the clause.
So, a motion, the city will endeavor as a primary objective of the RFP to stay within, or to maintain the 58-foot section.
Comma,
Uh-huh,
along its current course. And then read the rest from there.
whenever possible.
Perfect.
You were making a motion?
You made.
I can't.
You can,
Oh,
so
I
someone.
was just suggesting language.
No, that notepad. Or,
You can make the
I'm making a
motion.
motion for Will's, the language he wrote down there.
Okay,
Have a motion
so
to-
Jacob's,
A motion as suggested by staff.
okay,
Second that motion.
okay, thank you.
Motion a second, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Now, I think maybe not for tonight, but maybe we should muse a bit more on the raised intersections a little bit to get some ideas for engineering folks.
Will that be part of our 30 to 70%?
It could be. I mean, I was just thinking that if the group is really, no, we really don't want raised intersections at all, then
Big fan of raised intersections over here.
then it's still to be discussed.
I went to the one in McMinnville, I really liked it, it was like,
It improves
Felt very-
livability.
felt very natural.
I like the speed bump that's not a speed bump.
Exactly.
I like that.
I do too. I know I've said before, but 34th, I get cars going 50 miles an hour in that section. And there's not a raised intersection to be put there, but,
I think it also creates a little bit of a flow of traffic. If you just have stop signs all along, then you're stopping, starting, more noise, vehicles, pollution there. There's a lot of other factors to consider if you're not using a feature.
does anyone know off the top of their head the stop sign locations as you go from 3rd all the way to 11th? We have that.
6th.
There's one on 6th Street.
And 6th.
6th Street and Point Street.
I think those were the only ones until you get past the one.
Wow. Roads acting is the next, speed bump.
Yeah, the road is a speed bump.
The road is a speed bump. My police officers have asked for gum shields for whenever they want to go down.
Any other discussion about these areas? Next up is the discussion around, so there's a proposed tree rendering. Then our first version of our tree plan. Speak for myself, I feel like there's not a lot of information today about trees. But I guess I'm curious about starting, I don't know, can I do this, just starting discussions on those versus we've got a lot of information on trees and I can already think of parts of some of those documents that might need to be reworked.
I think that's a long ways down the road.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
I don't think we need to really be
Hashing.
hashing it out and looking at it for at least several meetings.
So one consideration I do have though. Can we put this in? I agree. I think we don't need to hash it out till later, but I also wonder about including it as a 1.1 high priority that as part of the RFP, consideration of the ad hoc tree plan and
Protection.
high quality replanting now will be prioritized as part of our RFP.
Sounds good. Who'd like to design a motion? And after this, I'll define the first round.
I'll give it a motion.
And then which pub are we going to?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, I did have a comment, I wasn't quite sure what you meant by. It sounded like you wanted to sort of push out any further work on the tree line, but I wasn't sure if I was hearing that.
So I want to continue working on it because I think it's really important. I think based on the information we got tonight, that doing some more editing to come back could be helpful.
So would it be true to say that we could have another meeting next month and maybe that meeting would start and kick off and focus on trees?
That could be if group is, well, we're out of town next month, so I know it's August.
Council has chastised me for not taking vacation sufficiently, therefore I have taken a vacation.
I do like the thought of scheduling like a tree focused meeting where we could really lean into that. We could, I'm gonna speak for myself, could absorb some of the information from today and then think about how to integrate that into a really good plan.
And the reason I say that is because I think maybe because of the actions that were taken right now tonight with our motions that we did pass, that we might have a slight calm or respite from the technical issues, providing an opportunity for us to have a really good conversation about the tree plan, which I see the tree program as a long-term thing. There's a lot of effort that needs to go into it. And so I think, and it's fresh in our minds. We just had that great input. And I think we should not lose that momentum and we should, you know, you can be wherever you're gonna be in New Hampshire surrounded by trees. So I think we should still talk about trees next month.
And that would be a conversation that would not get you into trouble, having to do that.
I'll have to be there.
Exactly my point. I wasn't gonna put it that way. We don't need you for it.
Right. And I suggest,
How can I put this bluntly? You don't need to be here.
and I suggest these are the top two items for the next meeting, and if there's more that needs to be added to the agenda, they will follow. And then also, it's not a requirement that we go through every agenda item as a must, is it?
I think we would have to have a motion to approve.
Well, there's agenda items, you could table them for the next meeting.
You can, okay, because I think also I would say, the fruit of that conversation might be better when we're all fresh.
Was that a fun?
2.5 hours in.
Like up here.
The only piece that I don't want to miss is the opportunity to just prioritize the tree and replanting as part of our RFP.
So obviously, the tree plan needs to be in a more finalized state prior to running the RFP.
Does it have to, or can we?
I think it
Can
probably,
we say that there will be a high prioritization around
the
replanting
evolving tree plan.
that will include input from the ad hoc committee and tree plan?
Consultant's perspective on that, it would be helpful to know just where that's gonna be driven.
I thought I was gonna say that.
So,
Can you clarify
well,
what are your needs to move forward from us discussing trees? Just maybe that's a better way to put it.
yeah, I mean, coming up with more definitive documents, I mean, this would be very helpful for a consultant that was gonna chase this project. So
Like
having
which
this,
trees, how many, where we wanna put them,
just at least understanding the context that the project's gonna be designed under, so that would share.
okay.
So I would say, from the things we've discussed, to make a nice clean RFP, we nailed down a few things. The intersection, I like to call them the domes, right? Nailing that down. Nailing down the tree plan. These are having all those nailed down by this committee before writing the RFP, I think would be very helpful.
Sorry, the RFP and the survey are the same timing or one comes before the other technically?
They could run at the same time. They could.
RFP goes out before the survey. Yeah, it doesn't, the survey won't do anything until you actually get a consultant on board though, and then they actually start
Oh, I
to
see.
utilize it.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
I mean, he's right, it's cleaner if we do the RFP and then it's a 1 meal deal with one consultant.
Got it.
And then they run a survey.
I see.
But I would like to have a nice clean RFP because I have to hold people accountable. So having the decision points captured in the RFP is really helpful.
Okay, it sounds like we're not ready tonight, though, to make a decision on raised intersections exactly. That requires more conversation.
Yes.
And so does the tree thing. Can those be the primary focus of the next meeting then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And can we have some type of guidelines on how long do we want to go? I mean, do we want to go 2 hours? That way we stay more focused. I mean, I would like to stay more focused and get tasks done and not be going until 8:30 or 9 o'clock.
And what's your, I guess, minimum need on the tree plan for us, for you to?
I think this document's pointing towards it. It's just kind of understanding the guidelines, the direction that, trees are gonna be replaced with in this project.
Or if you had some other document you've been given before that is a tree plan for a project like this, if you had one that we could reference, that would be helpful too. Something you'd like to see.
I don't think most cities do it like this.
Yeah.
This is called democracy. And most cities don't do that.
Okay. Or feedback on the one we have.
Yeah. I have.
I mean, if we finish that,
I just, want to expedite the process, make sure we get these right info.
Yeah.
So it's needed for the RFP, but not focus too much on dialogue with these hills that are more about,
Yeah, we can provide it. Feedback on there.
So Jerry, they're gonna provide feedback on the current tree plan, what is missing technically for the RFP to be successfully submitted. Can that be before the next meeting and enough time for us to update the tree plan, or is that not possible?
It's not this time.
I was gonna say, I don't wanna give you all a 2-week turnaround again, but if we tried for a mid-August.
Sure, I'll be in New Hampshire.
I don't think that one's quite the same as the full robot, right? No. This is not a big ass. Jerry. This is like a 2-hour read. This is not a roll play.
Thanks, Jacob.
I don't mean to, it's not the same topics, so.
You're right.
What do you think would be a reasonable timeline for y'all to?
I think within a couple of weeks, we could probably, so I'm thinking it's probably gonna be a little more research too on the raised intersection. And I just wanna make sure I understand what we wanna get back to you guys. So we're looking for a cost difference. We can switch back to that subject.
Yes.
So cost difference between raised concrete intersection versus asphalt.
Yes.
Safety elements, and then any other criteria that would be helpful to understand.
Impact not, it sounds like raised intersection means to provide benefit on tight corners.
Right, okay.
So some sense of what that.
Okay, so pros, cons, kind of.
Maybe
future cost analysis too.
Right. If there's a savings, what would that savings be in the future?
Right.
Upfront.
So more of a long.
Short-term, long-term
Yeah.
cost.
Sure, yeah. We do that maybe in 2 weeks if that's reasonable.
Okay.
Okay.
And then-
So room availability. Rachel said there are some issues getting the room on Thursdays or some Thursdays. But we can get the room. Well,
We do a Tuesday or a Wednesday instead of a Thursday.
he said the room's available on August 18th,
Is that a Wednesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Day after council.
Moving to that.
Was it August 18th work for the?
Yeah. I think so.
Cause we're fitting in around police trainings and,
What was the date proposed?
August 18th.
August.
So I'm gonna hop back.
Okay, yeah.
Timeline, you can give us the 3 meetings.
2 weeks is probably conservative. I think.
That was within that same, so that would So like
Yeah.
July 30th.
Now we're gonna.
I think that would work.
But
So if we did
it's too many facts, not for you to check on through.
July 30, and then I can push out to you all.
Well, these are the.
Or have someone push out, I'll have a hat, so I
Oh,
have
jeez.
trouble.
It's her plan.
Oh, okay.
But then I would need feedback from, so I did this the wrong timeline, because then I was up to 1 in the morning incorporating feedback. So it's gonna feel like a tight timeline, so if we get the 30th, we push it all out to you as soon as we get it. I would need all of the feedback by the 9th, so I can have it done by the 10th, so it can be posted by the 11th, so it's
Yep.
for the 18th.
Yeah, 1 week posting time. Yep.
So it would be Sunday, the 9th, to get me the feedback, which would give me an overnight to blend everything. To then publicly post it.
So this is the tree document.
Mhm.
It seems like maybe having our friends look at it would be highly, highly valuable.
Yeah, so they're gonna do the first pass.
I'm
and get-
sorry, our forestry friends.
They've seen it.
Right,
they
what
have
if
to-
we update it and
Mhm.
change it? Might be nice just to get their eyes on
I
it.
can push it to them too and bring them their feedback back to the meeting as well. No, that's a really great point. Yes, I will make sure that I get their feedback as well.
You're essentially asking for us to make
I said this-
any recommendations from like, I don't know, whenever we get it, 31st, 30th, whatever date it is, to the 9th is our window to review and provide feedback
You could get me your feedback by like,
Before the night.
before the night.
before the 9th is a dream. But I can update it as I go. That would be great.
Yeah, yeah.
But if we said like the 9th by 5 PM, but I included the 7 and 8 PM feedback I got too, so, yes.
I know that you just said a week before the meeting. But there have been examples where information is added to. You know,
Yes, sir, but it's not best practice.
it's not best practice, but it is possible and it's done all the time. So I'm just pointing that out, that it's good to aim for best practice, but
And we can all have ongoing conversation and
Right.
bring information.
we can be flexible if we need to be.
Yes,
Like
sir.
a good practice,
Yeah.
not best, but
We
good
just don't like to
enough.
push it if we don't have to.
Rachel was happy with that.
Because sometimes when you don't try to do the 1 week thing, as you know, some people in the community think they're rushing
Hiding
things.
something or rushing it.
They're hiding
Yeah,
something or.
but if it gets on the agenda at least, so you got it on the agenda and then there turns out to be some supplemental information, you can add it to that
Right.
agenda item.
Totally.
So I got a clarifying question. So will the total plan then be voted on Monday at city council?
I would,
After the journey is no longer on.
Yeah, I know.
I would prefer to take the whole package of these decisions, all the decisions, in one wrapper.
Okay.
And then staff has its marching orders.
Would that potentially be, is the August 24th, or do we want to, like, first meeting of September?
I would say September,
So if we try for the first.
and the first meeting of September might be tight as well. So,
Are you talking about the council meeting?
yeah,
Okay, so the first meeting of the council in September is the 8th.
that might be doable. If other variables don't emerge in the next ad hoc meeting.
So are we also saying 6 to 8 PM next,
There, we have done a lot of very technical things. for last, meetings. But I do love let's see if we can 6 to 8.
Yeah.
And anyone that makes it run too late has to buy the first round.
Jared, I think you maybe had a motion to add or a tree thing. Did we want to circle back to that
So
And then the
based
chief
on
here.
Will's new timeline, we'll do that
next time?
potentially the next, hopefully the next meeting. Any other comments for the good of the order?
Just to confirm, is it the 18th thing? Is that what was decided? Okay, yeah. I thought that's what. TJ is available. I will make sure he's here.
Yeah.
You checked with his to be wife.
Yeah.
That was the problem the first time, you're right, you're right. Gave me the dates that he wasn't available and that was not, so.
Okay. With that, I'm gonna call a meeting to a close.